Did you review that? I asked Chris.
It's all right, I don't.
But once it was relocated, that's what did the pain go
Well,
away?
the officer talked
As soon as it was.
so as soon as I work.
Welcome to the team before we start.
Well, good morning everybody and welcome to the debate today between the Academy and Mallorca International School. It's wonderful to welcome you all, our spectators, obviously our judges, our panel, the team who helped prepare for the debate, and we wish both teams all the very best and look forward to hearing what you have to say. So good night.
Thank you very much, Ms. Becker. Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Academy team. Welcome, Ms. Melanie. Delighted to see you with the team once again. Before we start, I would like to give just very special congratulations to the school. This has nothing to do with the debate, but I think it's important enough to mention because Mallorca International School, I understand, have just won a special prize. Let me read what it called so I don't make a mistake. The Echo School's Green Flag. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
That's correct. Well, congratulations, and maybe we can learn more about it some other time. Thank you. Well done. Well done. And thanks again, Ms. Clasham, for the excellent coffee. And so, as you can see, the whole brigade from the team was up there helping themselves to coffee and buns. Thank you very much. So let's remind ourselves of the other schools taking part in this is the 11th debate. We've got Agora, Belvedere, BIC, Montessori, San Cayetano, Queen's, Green Valley, and the new school this year is King Richard III. So, apart from the two teams here, we've got 10 schools taking part. I would also like you all to have a look at our new banner, thanks to Ron. We are getting invaluable support that we can continue doing these debates from now 9 sponsors. Yeah, you'll see it there at the top panel pictures, which many of you have been involved before, you know exactly, or Sally, you've been there more than one occasion. We've got El Corte Inglés, we're delighted to say are our new sponsor. We've got Imperial Properties back, MCC, which is the big special tennis centre, Ticket, Travel, and we've got also, apart from Avex Insurance, apart from our friends at Mallorca Bulletin, we've now got Wave Radio, who are covering it for us in English, and Phoenix Medium. So it's a good thanks to all of them. Without them, it would be very difficult to hold these debates. So thanks. And thanks, of course, to my own wonderful team of 18. We're now 18 volunteers to keep this going, and I can tell you they're a load of characters. They're absolutely amazing. We've got so much talent between them, and they totally support this project. They're from all walks of life. You wouldn't believe the stories of some of them. Anyway, before we start, a reminder. Phones, please, off or in silent mode, and no disturbance during the debate, which includes not refilling the coffee. Let me introduce you to today's team. Your timekeeper is Louise Newby. And starting on, yes, this is your first debate here. Heading the team today, the jury is Sarah Collett. Here we have Sue Wellington and Polly Newton. Our stars today, yes, to Mallorca International. We've got Leah, Daisy, and Gaia. Is that right? Gaia for Mallorca International, and for visitors we've got Lottie and Emily and Indigo. Yeah. Did I say them right? Mm-hmm. Great. Now, these two teams, you are voting. Academies for the motion, and Mallorca International are against the motion. Yeah? For everybody here, the motion is to maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model demands the correct professional management of all its infrastructure. To maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model demands the correct professional management of all its infrastructure. So let's get started. Over to our tour keeper, Louisa.
Okay, good morning and welcome. From when the bell starts, you will have 1 minute for your introduction. Then you will have a further 3 minutes then points of information. And then the last minute will be your final debate, your sum up. So whoever wants to start, which is Lottie. Oh, sorry, 1 second. You also have 15 seconds for points of information for the question, maximum.
Could I move this a bit forward? Do I just start?
Just no, yeah, no.
Honourable Chair, esteemed judges and fellow debaters. Today my teammates, Indigo, Feng Li and I rise to affirm the motion that to maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model demands the correct professional management of all its infrastructure. Indigo will be arguing that the correct management of transport infrastructure is crucial, and Feng Li will be arguing that business and economic opportunity is a necessity and reliant on our infrastructure. But firstly, I'd like to highlight that a crucial part of maintaining Mallorca's successful tourism model is the correct management and preservation of its impeccable environment and landscapes. The island's natural beauty is what lures in millions of visitors each year, and pollution and overdevelopment and overcrowding put this beauty at risk. They threaten the very scenery that defines Mallorca's identity. To protect the very industry that sustains our economy, we must manage our environment responsibly, ensuring our landscapes remain clean, sustainable, and as breathtaking as the visitors expect them to be. So protecting Mallorca's environment, or as many would state, the very foundation to its tourism appeal, is crucial not only to our economy, but to our survival. Think about it. Without Mallorca's world-famous pristine beaches, clear waters, and unspoiled landscapes, would it be any different from any Italian or Portuguese tropical island? It would lose the very essence that draws millions of visitors each year. Its tourism-dependent economy would plummet. And that's why professional management of infrastructure must go beyond just roads and resorts. It must include sustainable practices that ensure long-term economic stability by protecting the island's environment and maintaining a delicate balance between development and conservation. For instance, this data from the Balearic Sea Report of 2022 shows that 20% of Mallorca's and Formentera beaches are in decline. This is the effects of a festivity in Barcelona, showing how tourism and other overcrowding problems are infiltrating quality of beaches and damaging water quality.
Surely this shows that the infrastructure isn't being managed correctly and professionally, since the beaches are suffering from pollution and overcrowding.
This is why we need to improve our infrastructure, because they're not being managed correctly, and this is a priority to our island. So therefore we need to prioritize this, because it's not being managed correctly, and this is causing grave damage onto our water quality, which is causing damage to our economy. So, I'm going to continue with my point that the quality of water is worsening, as shown by the sources given out. Its tourism economy will follow along with it if it continues to plummet like this. Only through this responsible but necessary forward-thinking approach, Mallorca can remain not only a top destination today, but for generations to come. Moreover, the environmental degradation we tolerate today is not just a loss of aesthetic, it's a risk of economic decline. The Mallorca Sustainability Observatory reported that tourists have nearly doubled the carbon footprint of residents, 11.2 tons of carbon dioxide emissions versus 5.8 tons per resident in 2022. This information is from Mallorca's Daily Bulletin. Tourism is carbon intensive, so unsustainable practices contribute to climate risk, which threaten everything. Rising sea levels causing swamping of beaches, weather changes and worsening environmental conditions.
What's information?
I feel like you're saying that the motion isn't professionally managed, but you're debating for, so it is professionally managed. But you're saying that it isn't professionally managed, the environment.
No, I'm trying to say that the environment needs to be professionally managed and it's a priority to our infrastructure and economy. Furthermore, it's not just about protecting Mallorca's environment to maintain its beauty. It's about preserving the very ecosystems that sustain both tourism and local life. The beaches, marine habitats, mountain regions all form an interconnected natural system. Tourist activity has been found to compromise wastewater treatment, effectiveness on our islands, threatening coastal waters and marine life. For example, the Palma 2 WWTP is a plant that currently lacks sufficient capacity and equipment to sustain nutrient removal standards for nitrogen and phosphorus. Implicitly, its current performance is suboptimal. The present infrastructure is falling short and we need professional management to get ahead before environmental damage. So today, I leave you with a question. Are we willing? Thank you.
Good morning, wonderful judges, timekeepers, members of the opposing team, and guests. We are all here today to debate about the motion to maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model demands correct professional management of all its infrastructure. My team and I will be debating against the motion, and we will prove to you that while it can be a factor of maintaining Mallorca's successful tourism, it is not the biggest determining factor in maintaining Mallorca's successful tourism model. I, Lea Werner, will be explaining to you the Butler model and explain the various stages of the touristic growth the place goes through. Our second speaker, Daisy Ninaber, will talk about how huge the impact of economy, expendable income, and competition is in influencing tourism, and so far more than management of infrastructure. And our last speaker, Guy Gordon, will talk about the recent shifts in public opinion, proving that this has far more influence on tourism than the correct management of infrastructure. The Butler model is a model that shows the various stages of touristic growth a place goes through. First, the stage of discovery. People find the place, discover the place they're visiting. Then there's the growth and development, where the tourists only come because they're attracted of the natural causes and the natural culture and the natural beauty. Then the stage reaches as success, where tourism maybe lead to mass tourism, so it's not so good. Then it reaches a problem or stagnation stage, where it would only decline if it's not professionally managed to rejuvenate. Here, judges. As you can see at the end of the graph, there's a crisis point. A point that cannot just be managed by correct professional management of infrastructure. A point that needs to be where tourism needs to be rejuvenated or it will suffer an extreme decline. What if I were here to say that Mallorca has reached a crisis point? A point where maintaining the correct professional management of infrastructure will not maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model, no matter how much it has boosted it. Mallorca has passed the brink of what can be managed effectively just with professional infrastructure,
cruise ship congestion, 2.5 million people alone last year. Over 1,700 tourists, accommodation establishment rammed.
What are you suggesting instead of this professional management? Because what we're proposing as a team is that this professional management will keep this tourism crisis in control. And I understand that you're stressing the point that there is bigger problems, but how are you going to solve these problems, disregarding management of infrastructure?
Well, the motion implies that the successful tourism is only managed correctly because of infrastructure. But my team and I are saying that it's not because of infrastructure. As I was saying, you think this is all good, right? That Mallorca's professional management of infrastructure has led to a huge success, right? Well, you're wrong. This operational success is a strategic failure for...
You're arguing that tourism needs to be kept in control because it's causing damage to our infrastructure, but how can we keep it in control without damaging our economy when it's the main thing that sustains it?
With the government setting up new policies so that it will be balanced out, because right now we are at a crisis where infrastructure cannot manage all of tourists coming to Mallorca. So the infrastructure success is the direct cause of the island's unsustainable tourist density. Thanks for listening.
Fellow debaters, esteemed judges, why do we need professional management of our infrastructure? Is it truly necessary? Yes. But for us, locals, what does sturdy infrastructure really provide? To answer that question, I'd like to bring up businesses specifically. Businesses and companies in Mallorca thrive off of tourism. That can't be debated. Our economy builds and feeds from it, so why is this necessary? Buildings, transport, landscapes are what attracts the tourists and what locals rely on for jobs. Making our hotels worth staying at, restaurants worth spending at, beaches worth visiting is great, essential, but seasonal. This is the highlight of where unprofessional infrastructure deprives our economy. We deprive ourselves because we don't invest enough in protecting this infrastructure. We might make things quick and cheap, but long term it fails us. 23rd May, this year. Don't you remember? 4 people dead, 16 people injured, 1 collapsed terrace. One of the many examples which can further into common events if we continue unprofessional infrastructure. I surely wouldn't want to be in this situation. None of you either, tourists neither. As these spaces are not sustainable, and I do have an image. As these spaces are not sustainable, the cost of rebuilding, fixing, and updating becomes extreme. We need to level this out, because tourism itself is not the issue. A terrace like this one is. If we make these hotels need a maintenance check and refurbishing every 5 years on average. Beachfront areas preferably more often due to climate differences and humidity, which there is a lot in Mallorca. So what makes infrastructure proper is not only its original condition, it's its renovations and maintenance and its following lifespan. So if we make these places safely accessible, not only during peak season, we will provide much more profit, because centers could be open for longer and tourists wouldn't have reasons, such as this one, to avoid this beautiful island. One example of how this works would be the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands have decent weather during winter, are full of culture and life, yet have one thing we don't have: businesses running all year round, such as Bahia de Luque, a luxury hotel brand, opened since 1993. It has had minor renovations every 4 years on average, and these safety-related refurbishments have cost them an estimate of 10 million euros since 2013. But based on different sources and local news, Bahia de Luque makes about 60 to 90 million euros annually. And this is what my team and I call balance. Balance between cost, sustainability, and revenue. Furthermore, what do businesses provide? Jobs, hence incomes. To list a few popular ones, Mallorca specific: Airbnbs, beach clubs, golfs, general cultural events, hiking trails.
Points of interest.
Aren't Airbnbs damaging tourism as they're rising the cost of housing and pushing the locals out? You're talking about tourism being sustainable and available for locals and tourists. But things like Airbnbs, they're damaging the island residents.
Yes, but it is a choice that these residents make because they need the income, which is a job. These all provide jobs and careers, all of these available to all locals. So having these centers open for longer than purely peak season would provide more profit and stable income to these employees, as tourism rates would drop less dramatically. And maintenance of these places just to create more job opportunity. So if we have safe yet charming facilities, tourists will be attracted for longer than summer. Employees will be able to work all year round and pay rent, taxes, and food all year. This benefits both tourists and locals. If businesses only run in summer, they collapse in the following seasons, and the downfall in the economy is brutal every winter. We live here, we are affected, we know this. And these days, buildings can be made quickly yet professionally, such as 3D printing, which we do have a fund for.
Good morning, judges in opposition. My name is Daisy Nava, and today I will be discussing that whilst management of infrastructure is important, it's not the biggest determining factor in maintaining Mallorca's successful tourism model. Competition, disposable income, the economy, and the cost of living all have more influence over whether a country's tourism model is successful or not. Before the holiday actually begins, there's one determining factor in maintaining and where people go if they can travel, and that factor is money, disposable income. Defined by Investopedia, disposable income is the amount of money an individual or a household has to spend or save after taxes and other mandatory charges are deducted. This severely affects tourism, dictating people's capacity and willingness to spend on leisure travel. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good the roads are or how pretty the beach is. What matters is if people can afford to go to those roads and beaches. You can have...
Why would anyone even want to go to places if they're polluted and ugly? If it doesn't matter about the roads and stuff. If it's just damaged, why would you even need the money to go there if you don't want to go there because it's ugly and damaged?
Well, at the moment, the beaches aren't ugly and damaged. That is a good point. But Mallorca now has a foundation in which the beaches are good. They're well set up. So now it's the disposable income that's coming in.
But is that not infrastructure? Like the government is helping improve these beaches as part of Mallorca's infrastructure?
Yes, but I'm not arguing about the beaches. I'm talking about disposable income, money from other places.
Okay.
When the global economy falters, disposable income tends to shrink, leading to a measurable decline in tourism. The 2008 financial crash showed how fragile tourism can be when money gets tight. Back then, flights to Mallorca dropped sharply as people all across the globe cut back travel from their budgets. Local businesses really felt the hit and airlines reduced routes. Today we're seeing a similar trend. Travellers are once again prioritising price, and if Mallorca becomes too expensive or the economy experiences another dip, travellers will choose cheaper destinations, just like they did after 2008. which leads me to mentioning another crucial determining factor: competition. Now, Mallorca has a lot to offer, but what if other countries have similar for a better price? Take Greece, for example. It has the same Mediterranean feel, pristine white beaches, delicious fresh cuisine, and arguably even more history and culture. If you could go there and get the same sun and beach experience, plus more, for a similar or lower price, why wouldn't you? Who would really choose a more expensive option? Only the lucky few. And whilst it's the price of other places that are becoming appealing, it's also the rising cost of staples in Mallorca that are dragging people away and causing a decline in tourism. In a letter sent to Mallorca Daily Bulletins.
Do you have a statistic to support a drop in tourism?
I do actually. From 2023 to 2025, German tourist numbers to Mallorca dropped by approximately 10.2%, whilst British visitors declined by around 10.3%, largely due to inflation and rising travel costs. Now, as I was saying, in a letter sent to the Mallorca Daily Bulletin, Edward Fox described Mallorca's prices as unaffordable for most British tourists coming to Mallorca. He said he noticed a drastic increase in not only accommodation prices, but also those. I know that you're arguing that it's expensive for like English residents and stuff like that, but what about the people who live in like Ibiza, for example, that have residence discounts and can come here for cheap? How does that apply to them? How does that stop tourism from other islands in Spain? This is just a figure from the UK, but it's very similar for other countries. And Ibiza is a minority of the tourists coming. Yes, there are tourists coming. We have to look at it on a whole scale. Now, he said notice a drastic increase, which is not reflected in the global inflation increase. In conclusion, tourist numbers rise and fall with the global economy, not with infrastructure upgrades. During recession, tourism drops. During booms, it spikes. And competition is everything. So let me repeat. The whilst management of infrastructure is important, it's not the biggest determining factor in maintaining Mallorca's successful tourism model. Competition, disposable income, the economy and the cost of living all have more influence over whether a country's tourism model is successful or not. Thank you.
Honourable Chair, respected judges, and my worthy opponents. Mallorca's economy thrives on tourism. Each summer, millions of visitors come, expecting ease, beauty, and balance. But beneath this perfect infrastructure lies a delicate undersurface of roads and many other transport options. If this transport network fails, the entire model falters. I stand here today firmly for the motion that to maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model demands the correct and proper management of all its infrastructure. For tourists, the journey begins not at the beach, but at the airport, the bus stop, the road. Smooth, reliable transport forms the first impression of a destination. It completes a perfect memory, rather than starting a nagging headache. In July 2025, Mallorca faced a stark reminder of this truth. According to the Mallorca Daily Bulletin, 19th of July 2025, the TIB, Interurban Bus Network, suffered an indefinite strike, with more than 90% of its workers participating, halting connections between Palma and major resorts. Thousands of tourists were left stranded and locals unable to commute. This was not just a transport crisis, this was a tourism crisis. When accessibility collapses, so does the visitor experience. And on a tourism-driven island like Mallorca, this has grave consequences for local business. Proper management is not a luxury, it is essential to protecting the island's reputation and economy. Mallorca's challenge today isn't attracting tourists, it's managing them. What happens when tourism numbers grow without control and infrastructure, planning, and local well-being are left behind? Without clear transport strategies in place, this island risks losing the very qualities that make it so attractive to me and you. In August 2024, La Vanguardia reported that the authorities had to restrict private vehicle limit use to the Formentor Lighthouse Road, where traffic had surged to nearly 2,000 cars per day on a single, narrow, winding route. After introducing a shuttle bus system and strict vehicle limits, congestion dropped by 90%, and locals reported that the area was peaceful again. This is what good management is. harmony between tourism and the local environment. Without planning, paradise turns into a chaotic traffic jam. Tourism cannot thrive if residents suffer. Every summer, Mallorca's public buses overflow, and locals such as myself plead for priority just to get to work or school. The July strike was not only about wages, it was a symbol of strain on an already overloaded system. Investing?
The strike, you're saying the strike was because of the wages, but Lottie was talking about how Mallorca's infrastructure needs to be sustainable, and surely buses being free for locals, is that sustainable? So how does that add up?
I'm not implying that it's about wages. I'm implying, as I already said, that it is a symbol of strain on an overloaded system. Our system is not well managed. We need to manage better. Efficient roads, transport.
But isn't the motion that it is professionally managed?
Is that professional management is essential for tourism. Therefore, I'm implying professional management of this transport is essential for tourism. Efficient scheduling, transport, electric buses and bike routes all protect the island's environment and ensure that both tourists and locals can move freely. A successful tourism model is built on inclusion, not imbalance. For my final points,
However, you say that the transport network around Mallorca, so right now the buses, you're saying they're not very successful at the moment due to the overload of tourism and also locals. But the motion states that Mallorca's tourism model is already successful, and all we need to maintain that level of success is a correct professional management. So aren't you saying that the motion?
it is successful. I'm saying the motion is successful, but I'm saying that it demands the proper management of this infrastructure. Tourists are coming. These buses are filling because the tourists are here, but we need to manage it properly. For my final points, I cannot stress enough the utmost importance of the aviation industry. Mallorca relies heavily on its airport as a primary gateway for millions of tourists annually, making it their first and last impression of the island. During peak season, Palma handles over 1,000 aircraft movements a day. We need efficient airport structure. Mallorca's beauty may attract the world, but once you arrive here, it keeps the world moving. Accessibility builds satisfaction, planning prevents chaos, and sustainability secures the future. As the events of 2024 and 2025 have proven, when Mallorca's transport falters, so does its tourism.
Good morning, honorable judges, esteemed competition, and of course, timekeeper. Thank you for keeping us on track today. Today, I will be arguing against the motion that to maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model demands the correct professional management of all its infrastructure. I will be explaining that while Mallorca's tourism model does rely on the correct professional management of infrastructure, it is not the sole determining factor. Over 80% of Mallorca's local residents believe that there's too many tourists, and this frustration sparked mass protests in both 2024 and 2025, with over tens of thousands of tourists marching under local banners like "Mallorca is not for sale," and "the government put limits on tourism." Here are a few images that I believe sustain my point. As my fellow speaker touched upon, prices in Mallorca have increased exponentially due to its increasing popularity. Not just housing, grocery prices, accommodation, and...
You're saying that 80% of local residents are protesting against tourists, which I understand is a true statistic. But what about the fact that Mallorca's economy is fueled by tourism? The majority of these local residents own businesses that tourists keep alive. They fuel these businesses. Mallorca's its entire being is fueled by tourism. We are a tourism-based island.
Yes, that is a very valid point. However, surely Mallorca would benefit slightly better if the amount of tourism was ever so slightly lower, because in the end, there's still a lot of money, and it's true that the economy survives on this. But does it come at the risk of degrading the very resources that attract people to Mallorca in the first place? Back to what I was saying. Accommodation, restaurant, and grocery prices are 5 to 25% higher on Mallorca than they are on mainland Spain, with housing being 70% above mainland average. This meant that in 2024, 61% of an individual's salary was being spent on rent, which most people cannot afford. This ended up with 60% of Mallorca's local residents saying they struggle to find housing due to tourism. So let me ask you to think about my next question. If tourism is suffocating the locals, pushing them out of their homes and communities, and driving prices through the roof, how can it still be called successful, no matter how professionally it's managed? There are 3 official ways to measure the success of tourism: the society, the economy, and the environment. For Mallorca's tourism model to be called successful, it has to positively impact all 3. However, the motion implies that all is needed for Mallorca's successful tourism to be maintained is that we have the correct professional management of infrastructure. However, this might no longer be the case, because tourism in Mallorca isn't just negatively affecting the people, it's also affecting the housing and the environment. Tourists are causing the island to face serious issues like overcrowded beaches, rising pollution, and overuse of water. This comes at a serious cost, especially to the ecosystem.
Can we just have professional management form a balance between tourism management and like local priorities like infrastructure, instead of completely just like reducing the amount of tourism when it's what sustains our economy and what sustains this island?
Yes, you have a good point. However, simply putting limits and professionally managing infrastructure, it won't be enough, because there are multiple other factors, such as public opinions, that will factor in. So you can't just professionally manage one aspect and ignore all the others. Back to what I was saying. If tourism comes at the cost of degrading the very resources that attract people to Mallorca in the first place, then the model is self-defeating. So let me leave you with this thought. What is success? Because so far, Mallorca's idea of success is pushing its own people from their homes, leaving people with little or no money at all at the end of the month, and destroying the very resources that sustain the island and give it its soul. So, to conclude, I believe my team has successfully offered a plethora of facts, information, and statistics that show that infrastructure is important. However, it's not the most important and determining factor. So what are the biggest determining factors? Let me remind you. The crisis point that we are currently at, as shown by the Butler model. The expandable income that people have to spend. The global economy. The cost of commodities, or the cost of living. The competition, and the public image. My name is Gary Bourdin. Thank you for your time.
Opposing the against start. Sum up, please. You have 2 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share a quote from a recent Guardian article which explores tourism in both Spain and Mallorca. Like fast fashion, we have fast tourism. And now we have to slow down, have more contact with people, and explore a destination with more thought and depth. Tourism should be resilient, inclusive, and beneficial to visitors and residents alike. The tourism model of the 80s, 90s, even the 2000s was reliant on, amongst other things, package holidays, all-inclusive resorts, a road system that could handle the traffic, and a reasonable amount of tourists that didn't push residents out of their own homes. But the world is now a much more complex place than it was before, so success cannot be defined in the same simple ways as it was. The opposing team have tried to argue that the environment is the most alluring factor in bringing tourists to Mallorca. But if tourists don't have the financial means to travel, then it doesn't matter how good the environment is, because they can't come. They have also tried to imply that local businesses are thriving on the mass tourism, but are they really thriving if 61% of their salary is being spent on rent, something that is unaffordable for most people? So, to reiterate our argument, that whilst the management of infrastructure is important, it's not the biggest determining factor. As our first speaker, Leah, explained, Mallorca is now at a crisis point where the model demands to be rejuvenated, or tourism will fall into a decline. As I showed, people can only travel where they afford to go. If other countries are offering similar for a better price, then no matter how good the infrastructure is, people will go there instead. As our third speaker, Gaia, explained, it is nearly impossible to manage the infrastructure in a way which leads to success in the economy, environment, and perhaps most importantly, society. So to conclude, we can no longer solely rely on the management of infrastructure to boost and maintain Mallorca's successful tourism model. Thank you.
Fellow debaters and my judges, thank you for this amazing debate today. We really appreciate it, and it was a very good discussion. We have noticed a couple of points that you've made that we don't completely agree with, and we do feel like our argument is a bit more compelling. Like, you stated that Airbnbs are damaging completely, but citizens are renting out these houses. We need to think more about the bigger picture. Citizens need this money. Yes, a lot of their money is going to rent, but they live on Mallorca. This is the island they live on. What we're saying is that if we can improve this infrastructure, these things can be improved. Like I said, transport. If we can improve transport, such as tib overload, which we can, like we've seen in the Formentor Lighthouse, this improves Mallorca more as a whole. Like my team member Fengli said, we have a lot of business opportunity, internal factors of economic opportunity. These factors help with business on the island. We can improve these businesses. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed for two excellent points of view. As somebody who's worked in tourism over the years, I found it absolutely fascinating, the two opposing arguments that you had and how relevant they both actually are. Anyway, it's time for the jury. Well, I don't know what you all thought about that as an audience here, but it's now your turn. What we like to do now is that, are a two of the teachers still here? In fact, there's even a head teacher here. But we're not doing the debate then now. This is an informal chat. And it's when you can express what you might really believe, because both of you might have been arguing for or against, which is not your personal belief. And it's part of debating, but it's difficult. And so what we like to do at this time is just, all these lovely people in the audience here are perhaps going to be future debaters for their schools, and another gentleman. We would like to think what you think of the subject today. I mean, I'll throw out a couple of ideas, and then you can take it from there. One of the biggest problems on the island is water. Everybody, whether a tourist or a resident, needs clean drinking water. Yeah? We say that, shall we?
Sorry, I'm walking across the
No, I'm touching there. And yeah, so water. The tourists are blamed for using all the water. But if you look at this, even results that are being posted from, I don't know particularly about this municipality, but many municipalities have never ever repaired the water systems that were put in something like 40 years ago and more. What is happening? They are losing anything from between 25 and 40% of the water through leaks and breakages. What would solve that problem? Successful management. Repair things, you know. just repair the pipes and you'll have enough water for the tourists to make. Just one point, but there are many more aspects of it. When we came in today from the Calvi area, we were lucky. We were coming towards Palma and then up. On the other side of the road, there was 2 ambulances, no doubt being police there, and a couple of cars, and that's the accident. Yeah? The traffic jam went from just near Bendilat all along our road and all the way up along the Via Cintura. So a lot of that traffic would have taken, I don't know, 2-3 hours to clear, because there was only one lane. There's another way of dealing with traffic problems on the roads. It's all down to management. Yeah. So let's think what. Anybody like to start the discussion out here? Steve, you say.
I've got a question for the Academy.
All right.
And that is, how much do you regret your decision on winning the toss?
We regret it so much. We regret it so much. No, we're very pleased.
To be fair, I was the only teammate who found that I was more strong in the opposing argument. So I was kind of hoping a bit that they would win the toss and that we'd get the one that we didn't want. But like, I think overall we ended up quite happy because that's what we wanted. We were just kind of like our opposing one. We felt that it could be quite cool to do something a bit more abstract because it's not something that you like argue usually. It's quite out there and it's like harder to argue, so we kind of wanted a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think we wanted to go with the one that we're actually more confident in the end.
I was fascinated to know, actually, the winning team, what they would choose, because on the drive up here, I thought it's much more interesting to argue against, because the obvious answer to the question is, yes, of course we should have professional. Yeah, thank you.
I think it's fun because also I think a lot of our points are like relevant to us. So for example, tip, like the bus that I get every single day, the 204, was so delayed during the summer and it hardly ever comes, and it also always suffers with overcrowding. So I struggle a lot to like get anywhere on the island because of this bus. So that was nice for me because I was so passionate about that. It's really frustrating.
About people sitting here. I know there's a future debate.
I'd be really interested to ask briefly, if you had been arguing against the motion, would you have been arguing similar points, or did you have some quite different angles coming in?
We had some different angles. So I was going to look at a comparison between Pereguerao and Son Vida. Son Vida is sort of like, it's a luxury area in Mallorca, and Pereguerao is a normal neighborhood, but however it's actually a lot more popular in tourism than Son Vida because of better prices and more inclusivity. So yeah.
I had sort of a similar point to Gaia a bit, so I kind of linked to it a bit, but it was like, I was arguing as well that some residents got like thrown off like infrastructure and stuff like that, but you had the exact same like piece of evidence as me, and I was like, oh, like wait, but I was going to argue a bit more about how there's cultural commodification happening, how like because tourists are coming, they're kind of decreasing the significance and like symbolism of what our culture actually means, and it's like not what it used to be anymore because it's being altered for tourism appeal.
Yeah, and I also had kind of a similar statistics that you had, especially about the wages and the rent and stuff like that. I looked at more of a wage and like income stability direction, but you had similar statistics overall, so yeah.
Yes.
I have a question about the Airbnb. You both spoke about Airbnbs. Who do you think owns the majority of Airbnbs in Mallorca? Do any of you know the statistics or the researchers? Who makes the money from the Airbnbs?
It is a lot of people who actually come from out of the island, especially a lot of people who do live in luxury areas, who just happen to have a second or third house, especially a lot of German and British tourists.
A lot of non-residents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just in terms of I think the argument about that there's money made from Airbnbs for the local community, I would argue that that's not the case.
That's an interesting question because I understand from statistics quite recently that Poyensa has the highest percentage per head of population of rental accommodation, I mean, tourist rental accommodation.
Yeah, not just Airbnb.
And of course, it is such a beautiful area, you can't understand why, but it is a fact that it's got a much higher rental accommodation than other areas. Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
like to ask the Mallorca International School, you mentioned on several occasions the flashpoint. Can you just explain what the flashpoint is?
Flashpoint.
I'm sorry, speaking for myself, I don't quite understand what a flashpoint
Yeah,
is.
you mentioned a few occasions about we've hit a flashpoint.
Crisis.
Crisis
Flash
point.
crisis, sorry. A crisis point, I'm sorry. Crisis
Oh.
point, yeah.
That as I showed the battery model, it shows at the end of the graph that either the tourism will decline, so that the tourism won't be as successful as it was before, or it will rejuvenate when it will be professionally managed. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, Ron.
Did anybody research with the government to find out the solution that they might have and what figures they have
So,
for both your teams?
So for my team, I've done some research on the government, and the government did admit in its sustainability reports that there are too many tourists. In fact, in 2024, there were 13 times more tourists than there were local residents. So there were, I think, 1,300, I've got it in my speech here. 1,300 tourists for every 100 local residents, and that they were saying that they do have to start maybe putting more policies in place, more governmental policies. I didn't delve more quite into that.
Is there a minister of tourism in the government?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had, one of the stats that I had was it confirmed funds available for touristic infrastructure. And I feel very strongly for the point, so I didn't have time to delve deeper into this. But there is 694.2 million euros in reserve, which can be put to use for touristic infrastructure. Although I do believe that a lot of that funding can go to local infrastructure and transport, etc.
They would have been staggering if you'd have presented those. Staggering.
Yes.
I have a question for the Mallorca International School. You're arguing against, but it's the same question that you had earlier. If you'd been arguing the other way, did you have similar points?
We had pretty similar points. I was also talking about the environment.
I was talking about the airport and the roads.
And I was talking about soft infrastructure such as hospitality, so public safety and culture.
I have a question, Daisy. How much did you want to dance on the spot when Indigo asked you for if you got statistics?
I did feel very pleased that I did have a statistic.
I mean, it's there right in front of you. I mean,
Great.
I have a question. You just said that you were going to argue culture for 4. How are you going to argue for culture for 4? Because, for example, for me, I was arguing that for against. So, what were your points on that?
Well, that tourists often go to locations to experience the other cultures, and as you were also saying, lots of tourists here are British people and German people, so Mallorca's culture should maintain its culture and not get overshadowed by other cultures such as German or British culture.
I'm finding the younger members of the audience remarkably quiet today. Usually those are the ones that have got lots to say. Academy. I mean, I'm sure you've been involved in the preparation in some way, shape or form.
I think the main challenge with this motion was the interpretation of the motion, because it can be open to different interpretations. I think the other team was more focused on the tourism aspect, and we were more focused on the part that was stating the professional infrastructure, because we thought that, of course, we have this professional tourist model that we can't really change at this point. It's so ingrained within society and within how the island is functioning. So we're trying to look more at the other factors instead of the touristic model itself. So I think that was more our side of how we interpreted the motion.
Don't be shy. This is not the place to be shy. Would you like to say something?
Did you originally interpret the motion like in any other way, like before the points you gave?
I think I would have, like without thinking, I thought more of it once we started the research and everything, but originally I did think more about the tourism side of it before starting to think more of the local impact.
Remarkably quiet for tourism being the biggest and most important environment in the Mallorca.
It's a little bit different. I suppose I'm asking as someone who does the tutoring here, how do you guys practice? I think one of the biggest challenges is to raise points of interest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So how
Points
do you
of
guys
information.
practice points of information? How do you guys practice that? Do you have, like, let's say you guys, you know you're going to be the speakers, you've prepared some stuff. Do you guys, who are the extra people in the team, come in and kind of sit as if you're doing a full debate and you guys practice raising points against them? Or how do you, because having the time to do all this also within the school day is so difficult.
We kind of had like, when we do our like mock debates and practice like saying our speeches and stuff, sometimes at the end people would be like, oh, like there is thing I could argue like this against it and stuff like that. We actually didn't have like a direct time to like practice points of interest. Like we kind of did it all individually at home.
Okay.
And I feel like
But then what are you listening to? Because the raising the points of interest, you're having to respond to somebody. And I guess that's the thing that's really hard.
I think it
isn't
was kind of like we try and think of what other people would say, like individually. I don't know.
Okay.
Sometimes people would help out, but for me, for example, I did it mostly by myself, or like unless I was like saying my speech to everyone, and they'd be like, oh, like I could argue against this though. I was really trying to focus on like how you could counter argue that. Like for example, if I was arguing, I think it was your side of it, I was planning on doing the same thing that you guys did, which was like saying that we're not saying that tourism should stop altogether, we're just saying it should decrease a bit, because you can't really argue against that.
But we have a really good team. We have a whole group chat, and obviously we have everyone who works here. So we often hand in our speeches, and everyone here, they highlight them, POIs that they're thinking of, and we get to take them home, rehearse them.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a good team. We have everyone. So yeah, it's really handy.
It is an interesting question because it's the very basis of what debating is about.
Yeah.
Because as I said at the beginning, there's among these 6 people here, there are probably those that were debating for something they didn't believe in. They actually believed in just the on a personal level, the opposite. But the way it's gone, you're asked to debate either for or against. Yeah. And that, the ability to do that is what debating is all right. They call it the art of the debate. And that's where you're at the starting point. This is by no means the end of the road for most of the debating. It's the art of the debate, and that's being able to take a subject and see it from both points of view. It's not easy, and in today's modern society, that is almost non-existent. Everybody's got an extreme emotion, or here, but what you're doing is learning to see both sides of the argument, and that's why the points of information are so important.
Ready, but I'm going to call on Ollie to make the first comments.
Thank you very much. That was, as ever, a really high standard, really fascinating, and we always run the questions through our own heads going, what do I want to hear? What do I think people should be talking about? What is a red herring? Whatever. And as always, I've learned things that I wasn't even expecting to hear, and those arguments are really well put out, and the research takes a very complicated subject and comes at it from lots of different angles. It's fantastic. From your point of view, the fact that economics sometimes trumps over the infrastructure, and there's more nuanced debate there, and the depth of research you have at the making, always fantastic. Always something to guard against sometimes is bombarding facts. We're getting quite old and a bit slow. And I'm getting old and a bit slow. And you've done all this research, and sometimes it's like, sometimes choose to slow down a little bit and make the points land rather than hit us with 20 points, hit us with 15 that we can understand. But it's just, again, demonstrates the depth of research, which is what this is all about, really. So thank you very much, and congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, very good debate. I will bring up points of POIs, points of information. There were a lot today, and I think just be mindful of when you're receiving them, how long you take to answer them, because you maybe lead to running out of time at the end of it. So be mindful of that. Keep your eye on the timekeeper, and yeah, they are. We also scroll down if we feel they're disruptive or they're prepared POIs. If they're sort of gathered up during the debate, then that's different. So be mindful of the POIs. They are important. They're a crucial part of it because that's the debating part of it. But be careful, practicing how you handle them and how you give them. Okay. Thanks.
Well, I'd like to say that so far, I think this has been the best debate. It's been really interesting to see how it's developed over even the short weeks that we've been. You were clear, you were tackling the arguments really well. One of the things I'm always slightly, I'd like to pick up on is the use of the props. It's so nice to have a prop, but it's so important that that prop is used so that everybody sort of takes it in. Most of you did that actually, but it's too quick if you just sort of give it to a judge or something like that. But I particularly like Leah's dealing with the prop, because it was a super clear explanation of what you were trying to get across, and you explained it really well, so that's a big plus. What else? I think really today I thought you were so good at engaging with your audience, looking at people and causing all those things that make it much more relatable for the audience. So well done there. What else was I going to say? Yes, the point of information. I particularly liked the way, Indigo, you actually looked directly at the questioner, which is very important, I think. It's all very well, you have a questioner, but then just look away and talk to the audience. But as teamwork, it's far better if you actually look at the questioner and answer the question directly. Other than that, I would just like to say it was really very, very good today. We've had quite a difficult job deciding who is top dog today in terms of best debater. And shall I give it out? Yes, I shall. So, shall we have a drum roll? So our best debater today goes to Daisy. Well done, as I said, it has been a very close competition, but in the opinion of the judges, the best winning school today is Mallorca International. Well done.
It's the wrong way around.
Well, thank you very much. Can I ask both the teams to come up? Thank you very much. Justin, Sally, Melanie. There we go. Oh, she didn't know. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.